The world is full of urban legends, remarkable stories that spread like viruses around the planet, mutating and evolving until no one can remember which are true and which are urban legends. In this episode called One Wedding, Two Funerals, you'll see 3 incredible stories about either love or death, and sometimes both. First up, mourners at the funeral of Dane Squires hear a voice from beyond the grave. Then veterinarian Ron Olotsky hires a partner who turns out to be very bad for business. And finally, the Buellers return to their honeymoon hotel to relive their wedding night and make a very shocking discovery. Watch all 3 stories and decide which ones are true and which ones are false. Find out if you guessed right at the end of the show. First, it's a story known as Wake Up Call. The Canadian city of Toronto, Ontario has a population of over 2.5 million people, so it's fertile ground for news hounds on the trail of a human drama. Meet journalist Bill Dunphy.
Back in 2004, I was writing a daily news column for the Hamilton Spectator covering the entire city of Toronto. I would write crime stories, politics, and human interest stories. A city like Toronto is full of human interest stories.
Bill covered one story as it turned from an ordinary missing persons report into something much bigger. On September 10th, 2004, Diana Barton hears news that a homeless man has been killed by a train. She fears it might be her drifter brother, Dane.
Dane Squires was a welder who'd fallen on hard times and had spent probably the previous 2 decades living on and off the streets. When she heard about the body that had been found by the track, she called the police to see if it might be him. And Diana had been expecting to hear from and to see Dane at about that time and hadn't, and she'd grown worried.
Full of dread, Diana goes to the morgue to ID the body. The John Doe had been sideswiped by a train, but behind the injuries, Diana believes she sees the face of her brother.
This was particularly hard for her because the family had lost one of their daughters as a teenage girl when she'd been struck and killed by a car back in Newfoundland.
Afterwards, she contacts the rest of the family to tell them the tragic news.
The family planned a simple funeral, and Diana planned to hold a small wake in her home afterwards. When the day of the funeral came, she found herself too torn up by grief to actually attend the funeral, so she stayed behind while the mourners, friends, and family attended the funeral itself.
A small, intimate service mourns a man who had met an untimely and grisly end. As the immediate family are saying their final farewells, Dane's daughter, Trina, receives an unexpected phone call.
And it was her aunt, Diana, on the phone.
Is this some kind of sick joke?
Minutes earlier, while preparing for the wake, Diana receives a very unexpected guest.
Who's there?
And discovered her brother standing on her doorstep.
Dane! Oh my gosh! You're alive! Oh my God! Oh, I thought you were dead! I thought you were in the morgue!
Dane Squires had returned in time for his own wake.
Oh goodness! Oh, it's terrible!
Just by chance, Dane had read his own obituary in the newspaper and rushed to his sister's house to find out what was going on.
After Diana had gotten over the shock of seeing her supposedly dead brother show up on her doorstep, she realized that they were going to cremate the wrong man. And she called the funeral home in a rush to prevent that. That was the call that Trina received.
He's alive!
Trina stops the cremation in the nick of time. Then, the once grieving family head back to see the now undead Dane.
The family gathered at Diana's house for a wake to find Dane Squires, the man that they thought they had just sent off, smoking a cigarette and having a drink, apparently alive and well.
Diana had wrongly ID'd the John Doe in the morgue, a surprisingly easy mistake to make.
The dead man bore a striking resemblance to her brother, that he had the same nose and chin. And I guess in her grief and anguish, that she couldn't tell the difference.
But with Dane alive and kicking, they decide to put the fun back into funeral.
It was a wake that continued long into the night and into the next day, actually.
So, is this story gravely true, or is it just a morgue mix-up myth? Find out at the end of the show. But first, check out this mini-myth. Mini-myth number 985, Cell Popper. In 2007, a group of physics students at a university in Hefei, China, has a theory. They think the radiation given off by cell phones can cook popcorn kernels. To test their theory, the students surround a few kernels with their cell phones. Then, they call the phones simultaneously. Incredibly, a few moments later, the popcorn kernels bounce off the table and pop open. A video of the test spreads like wildfire on the internet. So, does this story radiate reality, or is it just a phony call? Is it true or false? It's false. The video used digital editing trickery and was made by a company that sells mobile phone headsets. On Urban Legends, we show you 3 amazing stories. You must decide which are totally true and which are fiendishly false. So far, you've seen the tale of Dane Squires, the guy who everybody assumed was dead until he attended his own wake. But is it true or false? Find out at the end of the show. Now it's time for our next story. It's called Down Boy. The marshlands of Taylor's Island, Maryland, is a watery haven for wildlife, and for those that rely on animals to make their living. Meet Dr. Ronald Lotsky.
I'm a veterinarian. These days I am retired. I spend my time in the garden. It's much more relaxing. There's much less responsibility. I miss the clinic. I miss the customers. I miss the animals. But I know they're in good hands.
But finding a successor led to an incident Dr. Ron would regret forever. In July 2000, Dr. Ron is at his practice when he finally comes to an important realization.
I felt as I got older, I also was getting slower, having to check things over maybe 2 or 3 times. And I needed somebody else to help me with the practice. It was getting bigger and bigger. And I wanted to sort of hand them over to somebody that I really felt good about. And I wanted to work with the person that was going to take over the clinic. And I also felt a responsibility to my customers. Most have been with me for a long time. I wanted to make certain they were in good hands.
He advertises the position and interviews the hopefuls.
Dr. James, of course, was one of the ones who applied, and it was obvious he was the one. He was confident, he was good.
The young Australian vet settles in quickly.
We've got that here, but this is what I'm recommending for the...
Both the animals and the customers were very much at ease with him. He obviously was very comfortable with the customers, and I was very happy with the choice.
How is he?
He's good.
Yeah, he looks good, actually.
Everything is going well, until one of Dr. Ron's lifelong clients pays a visit.
Paul is an old customer. His dog, Jake, was quite old. We've been together for a long time.
Dr. Ron. I'm well, how are you?
Good, really well. Hi, Jake. What's happening?
So, that day we were taking one of our trips, visit some family.
couple hours drive away, and we didn't like leaving Jake behind.
Oh, good. Well, we'll take good
Jake
care
had gotten quite nervous on car trips as he got older, and it had become the custom for Paul to bring Jake in for me to give him a sedative to calm him down and actually help him go to sleep in the car.
But this time, Dr. Ron decides to let the new guy administer Jake's injection.
I went into the back, and Jake was already asleep. Picked him up, took him out, and away we went.
Paul puts Jake in the back of his car and sets out on his trip.
Just as he was leaving, Dr. James came rushing out and said, "Where's the dog?"
Jake? Oh, he's in the car.
And he said, "Why in the car? I've just started the incinerator."
I've just prepped the incinerator. Why did you prep the incinerator? For the dog.
And I said, "Why?" And at the same time, I realized exactly why.
For Jake? Yeah. Oh, no. Oh, no.
He was supposed to have an injection to go to sleep, to help him sleep, relax. And he said, "I thought you told me to put him to sleep." And we both realized at the same time what a terrible mistake we'd made. Terrible shock. Dr. James felt so bad he left the clinic. He left and never returned. He just couldn't face Paul.
So is this a true tale, or is it just a shaggy dog story? We'll let you know at the end of the show. Before that, check out this mini-myth. Mini-myth number 248, pole dancer. In Lafayette, Indiana, exotic dancer Kim Matez likes to rehearse her choreography at home. She even installed her very own 10-foot pole. Her practice attracts teenagers, kids on school buses, and guys who litter beer cans in her neighbor's yard, especially since Kim's pole is on her front lawn. The neighbors complain, but the scantily clad Kim is within her legal rights. Not even the police, whose precinct is right across the road from her house, can stop her. So is this story the bare naked truth, or is it just a fantasy? It's true. Even county commissioners found nothing illegal about Kim's act, but as a goodwill gesture, she toned down her sexy routine and wore less revealing clothes. On Urban Legends, we show you 3 astounding stories. Your task is to separate the true tales from the fake fables. So far, you've seen the tale of Dane Squires, the guy who was presumed dead but showed up at his own wake. And the story of Dr. Ronald Lotsky, a vet whose apprentice got mixed up and put down an old dog instead of helping him get to sleep. But are either of these stories the real McCoy? We'll reveal the truth at the end of the show. Now it's time for our final story. This one's called The Honeymooners. Every year, 50,000 newlywed couples spend their honeymoon alongside the beauty of Niagara Falls. Honeymooners, like this happy couple. Meet Martin and Gail Bueller.
We were 18 years old, and Martin proposed to me, and that exact day we went down to the courthouse and signed the papers and got married.
It was a day they'd remember for the rest of their lives, but not for the usual reasons. On September 15th, 1992, lovebirds Martin and Gail arrive at their honeymoon hotel.
Well, the honeymoon, I mean, we couldn't really afford much. We decided we'd book a cheap, low-rent motel, cleverly chosen for its inclusion of a bridal suite.
I'm fine, thank you. My name's Martin Bueller. I have a reservation for the bridal suite.
Bridal suite equals honeymoon, which is what I figured.
It really did.
Okay.
The manager shows them to the bridal suite.
The hotel was not much to speak of. It was very scuzzy, but we didn't pay too much attention to the environment that we were in because we were pretty focused on each other.
Your luggage here.
We basically didn't come out of the room anyway, so
Yeah.
for the 2 days that we were there.
So for our 10th wedding anniversary, I decided to relive the magic of our wedding night by rebooking the same old hotel.
So on September 15th, 2002, they returned.
Went to the hotel, and sure enough, same proprietor is there.
Same weird guy. He actually recognized us the
He did
minute that we
recognize
walked in the door.
We made a reservation for the bridal suite.
Mr. and Mrs. Bueller.
Yeah, we are.
Well, welcome back.
It was strange.
Yeah.
So he had to leave us for a minute. He went into the office to pick up some registration cards.
Yeah, reservation card.
Just wait for just a moment.
Absolutely.
Lovely to see you both again.
Lovely to see you too.
We were left alone in the lobby there, and we started to poke around.
VHS videos.
Oh, there's an essay on this book in like grade 10 or something.
So I opened up the front cover, and there was a videotape hidden inside of it.
It was pornography. It was clearly labeled as such.
Yeah, it's super creepy.
XX, the honeymooners. Who writes XXX on their tapes?
Martin hides the mystery tape.
You. I finally found some cards.
Excellent.
Here you are.
Thank you.
Just like the first time, the manager shows them to the same bridal suite.
I'm just so surprised that you remember us.
Well, your last visit was most memorable. Here we are.
Really? Yeah, this place hasn't changed very much.
No, it hasn't.
Hey, listen, that's for you, okay?
Oh, thank you. And if there's anything I can do for you, do let me know. Okay?
I will let you know. Thanks very much.
Sure enough, right in that room, VCR.
Martin, being Martin and being a guy, of course, wants to watch the porn that we found and like
I was a
the
little
dirty guy's
interested.
book.
I was a little curious. I wanted to see what was going on this tape. XXX, the honeymooners. Sounds like a good story.
But it isn't the story that catches their attention.
It was very low class, very home video. The first thing we saw was somebody standing right in front of the camera and, you know, walking away.
Yeah, and you see these two people basically on this bed. It took us a couple of seconds to realize that was the room that we were actually in. And then it took us a couple more seconds for us to realize it was us.
Oh my gosh.
That's us from 10 years ago.
No,
10
Martin,
years
it
ago.
can't be. Just take the tape out of the VCR right now, please.
That
my
dirty
gosh.
old... He's got cameras in these rooms.
I don't know what he had. You have to
10 years ago.
Martin, calm down.
10 years. It's been here for 10...
Just me.
Martin and Gail's romantic evening had been recorded in all its glory by a hidden camera, which the hotel manager had switched on.
Martin,
I'm gonna kill him.
Right now.
No, I'm gonna
Martin,
kill him.
Just relax and let's get out of here.
I got so mad. I just, the
Oh, yeah,
thought of the
he got
invasion of
so
privacy
mad.
that this guy had done to us by taking our lives and putting them on tape and keeping them for his own
It's
gratification.
horrible. He was super upset, and all I wanted to do was get the tape, get out of the room, and just like get home to like a safe place.
Fastest check-in, check-out in motel history.
So is this story for real, or is it just a honeymoon hoax? You don't have to wait too much longer to find out. All will be revealed after this final mini-myth. Mini-myth number 594. Daddy Dearest. American soldier Michael Milson is stationed near Padova, Italy in 1984. A good Catholic, he goes to a local church for Mass and sits in the back. But an usher moves him to the front. Because he doesn't speak Italian, Michael follows the man seated beside him. When he kneels, so does Michael. When he opens his hymnal, so does Michael. And when he stands, Michael stands too. until he sees the man staring angrily at him. Michael takes the first opportunity to escape, outside. An English-speaking priest tells him that this was actually a christening, and that the minister had asked the father of the child to stand. But is it true or false? It's false. This is a typical urban legend that plays on our fears of being an outsider in other cultures. Now it's time to reveal the truth about our 3 stories. First up, it's a tale of Dr. Ronald Lotsky, the vet whose partner got confused and gave a dog a lethal injection instead of a tranquilizer. But is it true or false?
I am not Dr. Ronald Lotsky, and this story is false.
This legend has been around since the 1920s. One version features the chaotic fallout of giving the painkiller morphine to a cat, which sends our feline friends into a furry frenzy. Next, it's a story of Dane Squires, the guy who everyone presumed was dead, but who showed up to celebrate at his own wake. But did this story really happen?
My name is Bill Dunphy. I'm a reporter with the Hamilton Spectator, and this is a true story.
Dane's sister Diane mistakenly identified the body of a man hit by a train as that of her brother. Dane only became aware of the confusion when he read his own obituary in the newspaper. Which leaves the story of Martin and Gail Bueller, the couple who returned to their honeymoon hotel after 10 years, only to find a video of their wedding night in the room. But is it true or false?
This story is false,
I've never been on a honeymoon.
but I have.
This myth is surprisingly old. The first recorded version dates back to the very early days of motion pictures, appearing in a movie called The Story the Biograph Told, made in 1904. That's the end of our episode called One Wedding, Two Funerals. Were you wedded to the truth, or were you fatally attracted to the folklore? However you did, you'll get another chance to separate fact from fiction in the next installment of Urban Legends.